We all have stories about money. Some are funny, some are embarrassing, others make us cringe, while others leave us empowered. Far too often, these stories are left unshared. Money is such a taboo subject, but quiet as it's kept, our experiences with money are more common than we think. When we share stories, we feel less alone in our experiences, and we discover new strategies for navigating life with money. I'm your host, Melissa Mazard. You're listening to Memories of Money, where our guests reveal their financial secrets and where you will learn practical lessons and principles for a life of financial health and prosperity. In this episode, our guest reflects on his early lessons about money, which helps him grow and maintain his wealth as a millionaire. He also opens up about the internal challenges he faces, proving that growth is a continuous process, even at the top.
I think my very earliest, if I'm like really going back, because I think when I was a little tiny child, like, 3 or 4 or 5, I had a little cashier toy that had like colorful coins made out of plastic, and you could like put them into the little till or put them into a gumball machine or something like that. And so, that's not really money, but I guess it's my earliest memory. I think the earliest time I remember actually having money being issues, I remember being in fifth grade and I wanted new shoes. And this was like, I was born in 1980. And so this was like Nike Air infancy years, and all the cool kids were wearing Nike Airs. My parents said, I need new shoes. They said, you can only spend $40 on your shoes max. And like Nike Airs were like more than $40 even back then. I remember going to the shoe store and just like looking through every single like bargain basement or bargain bin discount sale. And I did find a pair of Nike Airs, and they were so ugly. They were like pink and green neon with like white, and just like not cool at all. Not the ones the other one wearing, but it did say Nike Air on the back. So I was like, all right, this qualifies. I'm getting them. They're under 40. And then I wore them to school, and everyone made fun of me because they're so ugly. And I was like, oh man, I failed. I thought I was gonna be cheered because I had Nike Airs, and the budget failed me. So I do remember being limited by my fifth grade shoe budget. I remember being sad that I was made fun of. I remember feeling like I made a mistake by prioritizing this brand. All I was looking for was Nike Air on the back. I wasn't looking for comfort or design or anything else. I don't remember really blaming the budget. I guess I wished, just as a child does, I wish I could just have whatever I wanted. But I kind of took it more of a lesson as like I was prioritizing the wrong things. I mean, this is a 43-year-old trying to get into the mind of a 10-year-old or whatever it was. But yeah, I definitely felt bad. And I remembered not liking those shoes and feeling like I made a big mistake by picking them. I remember at school a moment where my mind was expanded, where I saw a compound growth spreadsheet, essentially, where you would be putting away $500 a month or $100 a month or whatever it was. And if you got a certain rate of return, like a 10% return on your money, after a year or two, nothing really happened. But if you kept going down the spreadsheet, and what you see after like year 3 and 4 and 5 and 10 and 20 and 30, the numbers got crazy. You could put away just like a couple $100s a month, and as long as you're getting this rate of return and this compound growth, you kind of saw this exponential growth happen. And I think that was instilled in me at a young age, where it's like, ooh, okay, putting money away early and often is a really valuable technique to make a lot of money snowball over time. I think that was a math class. I went to public school in Southeast Michigan, and it was a good public school. I was fortunate to have teachers who taught about money. Actually, I have an even earlier lesson. I remember in fifth grade, same fifth grade with the Nikes, actually. My teacher, Mrs. Galeda, she had a stock picking class for us, where this was like pre-internet. We would like get a newspaper and we'd like choose stocks, and we'd like track them day over day. And we were in fifth grade, so I think it was like very unscientific. Just the introduction to the existence of it, I think, was something different than what a lot of people experience, which is the stock market is so foreign and scary that you couldn't possibly even touch it without being a Wall Street insider. Whereas we were just a bunch of fifth graders, like kind of randomly picking ticker symbols from the newspaper and then seeing how they did over time. And I think that helped just make it less scary later in life when I needed to do it for real with real money. Middle school, it sounds young, but middle schoolers are smart. I talk to 30 and 40 and 50-year-olds who don't know this stuff, but it's not like the concepts are so complex they can't wrap their heads around it. It's just that they haven't been introduced to it, they haven't learned it. So yeah, like I love starting that young. I think my very first paid job, like on paper, not counting lemonade stands or chores around the house or whatever, I worked for a summer camp for like 8 weeks. And I think I was 16 or 17. And I think I made $1,200 for the summer. I don't even know if it was minimum wage. I don't know how they got away with paying someone like $100 a week or whatever. But yeah, I remember that was my first job. And one cool thing about that is my dad, when he realized I was going to be like on paper with reportable income, that made me eligible to contribute to an IRA, which is something that many adults aren't doing yet. But he gave me a gift and said, hey, I'm going to donate or gift you a match of what you made. So like little 16 or 17-year-old Jeremy can keep the money he made for his spending throughout the school year, but then I will donate it, or I'll match it with like $1,000, and we'll contribute all of it to a Roth IRA. And we opened up the account and transferred the money in and picked some mutual funds. And I just thought that was what everyone did at 16 and 17. And then when I was like in my 30s, I would ask people, now that I've had a Roth IRA for 15 years, I asked people like, hey, what's in your Roth IRA? And they would say, what's a Roth IRA? And I'm like, oh, well, where do you keep your mutual funds? What's a mutual fund? I started a company when I was coming out of college at 22 or so, and I sold it when I was 34 for just over $5 million. And so I worked for 12 years in the company, sold it for $5 million. My share after taxes was about $2 million. So I walked away with like $2 million in my checking account on one day, which was very nice. My parents were frugal, and that was instilled in me throughout my childhood. I think frugality was beat into me so much as a child. I have never been an excessive spender. I do think part of being successful with money is spending it sometimes. The goal of money isn't to die with the most. If you die with the most, then you have not fully utilized the tool. I think the goal of money is to maximize your life value. I think some people spend too much too early when they basically get themselves into massive amounts of debt and then are living paycheck to paycheck and very anxious and scared. That's not good. Some people can go the other way too and save too much and never spend anything. One of my mistakes is just not spending enough. I'm 43 now. I think probably a lot of my 20s and 30s, I maybe could have been spending more or doing a better job spending on the things that mattered most to me, like jumping on travel opportunities, jumping on things that make sense to do in your 20s that don't really make sense to do in your 40s. I feel weird now going to a hostel backpacking around. When I was 20 or 25 or whatever, you could go to New Zealand for a month or go backpack around Europe or South America and go to a hostel, and there's a bunch of other 20 somethings there. And even if you're like 29, you might feel like there's a bunch of gap year 22-year-olds or 20-year-olds or whatever it is. I actually just got engaged. I got engaged late in life and my single days are over. But up until a couple of years ago, I was basically single, and I like wanted to do those types of things. I was like, well, I feel like I can't because it's just too weird. Frugality is really baked into my fiber, and I'm still to this day kind of rediscovering my own relationship with money. A very recent example, this was literally in the last year, where I was flossing one day with like a little piece of floss that was like 6 or 8 inches, and it kept slipping on my fingers. I was so frustrated, and like I don't floss as much as I should because it's such a frustrating experience because of that. And I thought, I'm like, wait, why is this floss so short? And the only answer was that it was to not waste money because you throw it away afterwards. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. I'm literally a multimillionaire. Like now my net worth is over $5 million because of the growth of my investment since I sold my company and the additional contributions that I put in. And there's no amount of floss I could ever use in my entire life that would even be rounding error compared to that. And so the fact that I'm like potentially sacrificing the health of my teeth in the name of frugality is crazy. And so I had to learn that. I grew up thinking that paying for any convenience is a mortal sin. Paying for parking, like you cannot pay for car parking. You drive around for hours looking for a free spot. Valet is so out of pocket. You couldn't even say the word valet in my house. Going out to eat was a rare treat. Any sort of upgrade, like a better concert ticket or a better, say, an airplane or any sort of paying for convenience fully was burned in me as like a banned activity. And now I need to like maybe unlearn that and say, okay, for sure you can waste a lot of money that way, but I need to like reevaluate my own finances and my own goals. My fiance has a 3-year-old child and we all live together. And so sometimes I'm on childcare duty and I am like, okay, it's kind of hard to go to the grocery store with a 3-year-old. It's not the worst thing I could, but based on my goals that day or whatever, maybe I order grocery delivery. Even saying that, it's hard to let those words escape my lips because it feels like I'm sinning by paying for convenience. I have only done that a couple times in my life when I had COVID or something, but I think that's okay sometimes if your finances permit permit. I hope that I'm frugal, not cheap. I think cheap means you don't tip, you don't value things, just you prioritize money over everything. I think I'm generally pretty good at saying I'd rather have nicer things, just live more minimally than buying a bunch of crap. But I still have lessons to learn for myself. I just read a book called Die with Zero, which does a great job of basically painting a picture that while the compound growth chart says, hey, when you're 80, you're going to have this amazing amount of money, there's a life health chart that's like decaying and your knees are getting worse and your energy is getting lower. And people who are in their 80s generally don't want to go backpacking around Europe because they don't want to walk a lot, or maybe they just like staying at home more or whatever it is. And so while the money might be getting more as you get older, your health and energy and excitement and wonder and things like that might be getting less. And so you want to be basically taking this year to go skydiving if you want to skydive, not wait for 10 more years. I've definitely wasted a bunch of money. I've made bad investments. I bought Sears Canada stock one day when I thought I was going to go up like $10,000 or $20,000 of it, and it went to zero. I invested in some oil drilling thing that a friend turned me on to, and it went to zero. I remember reading an article about Sears Canada. I don't even know if people remember what Sears is. It used to be like this massive department store in the US that sold washing machines and snow tires and tools and everything else. And it was like king of the world back in when they mailed you a catalog, like mail order catalog days. And then the internet came around and they just couldn't compete, and the malls died and they went out of business. And I remember reading in the early 2010s or something about how Sears Canada is different. It's like managed different. It's more like Target. Canadians love it, while Sears US is going bankrupt. Sears Canada is going to flourish. And this article made this really compelling argument, and the stock price for Sears Canada was really low. It was up at like $40 a share and dropped to $8 a share. And I was like, ooh, if that just goes from 8 to 16, even half of what it used to be, I'll double my money and I'll be so smart. I literally think I put in I think it was $10,000. And then it went from like $8 a share to $2 a share. And then I put another 10,000. I was like, okay, now I can get it's like almost like a gambler mentality. I was like, okay, now if it goes from 2 just to 5, doesn't even need to go back to where it was. Then I'll like get all my money back. And then it went from $2 a share to zero. It just went bankrupt. Like, of course it was going to. At this point, it seems so obvious to say that, like, oh, of course Sears went bankrupt, you idiot. Like, we don't know those things in the moment, right? Like Apple Computer, when I was in college, was a joke. Microsoft had to bail Apple out just to like make sure they still had a competitor so they didn't get like antitrust. Apple Computer was Sears, and when I was in college, it was that much of a joke. They weren't even serious machines. There was no serious software. No one used them. It was just getting worse and worse every year. And now it's the biggest company on earth. It seems obvious now that we know, but no one was calling that. So yeah, I feel very sad that I lost all my money at Sears Canada and a few other speculative investments, but I kept it relatively small. And it's just a reminder that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And when you think you do, you're almost certainly wrong, because humans are way worse at predicting things than we feel like we are. We feel like we can see patterns in this world and we know what's going to happen, but that is almost never true. And only with the benefit of hindsight do we like rewrite history and rewrite our memory. Like, oh yeah, of course, Apple Computer was always this. No, you didn't know that. You didn't know Sears Canada was going out of business. We don't know anything going forward. We just tell ourselves it seems obvious in hindsight. One thing I give myself credit for is all of the worst stuff I did with a relatively small amount of money. And so anyone can be tempted to get into something riskier. Like, ooh, I got a hot tip from a dude at a picnic, or I just got a gut feeling about this stock or this investment, whatever it is. I suggest those people hold yourself to the 90-10 rule, which is 90% of your portfolio buy and hold index funds, which is a simple low-cost investment that's going to ride the market and ride it up indefinitely. With all that other risky stuff you want to do, crypto, options, day trading, stock picking, speculative investments, whatever, keep that in your 10%. I think almost every one of my, at least investing mistakes, can kind of fall under the umbrella of I made things too complicated. When you first hear about the world of investing, it's a very complex sounding place because there are futures and options and day trading and Bitcoin and gold and shorts and GameStop and all this crazy complexity. And you just imagine seeing the Wolf of Wall Street and these guys on the trading floor and the stock exchange frantically waving pieces of paper over their head and shouting. And you're like, how could I possibly enter that world? And if I do enter that world, I need to be doing some really sophisticated stuff, like making some complex decisions. But the crazy thing about this world of investing is the more complex you make it, the worse it is for you. I often see these really clickbaity internet videos where it's like millionaires don't want you to know blank, and it's almost always nonsense. Most millionaires, like I know a lot of millionaires, and they're all really nice people, and they will gladly sit down and have a coffee with you and tell you exactly what they do to make money. And usually it's they spend less than they make and they invest the difference. But I will say, like, that one secret I think that the financial services industry doesn't want you to know is that the financial services industry doesn't make money by making you more money. They want you to believe that, hey, you go put your money with an insurance guy or a financial advisor guy or an investment guy, and like they're going to make you more money, and that's how they make money. But they really make their money by charging fees. And so when you invest through these complex either insurance products or financial advisors, or on your own by picking and choosing stocks or getting into these complex situations, all that complexity does not favor you. And if I could like go back in time to whenever I've made my money throughout my life, whether it was selling my company or just earning along the way, and just stuck my money in the most simple, basic little target date index fund and just let it ride until today, I would have much more money. All of my investment mistakes are because I was getting into complex things. Ooh, I'm going to buy this dividend stock, or I'm going to get into this oil drilling thing, or I'm going to buy a bunch of tricky ETFs and try to make some moves. Whereas if I just stuck it in this most boring thing, and people love poo-pooing the boring thing because there's no salespeople pushing the boring thing, there's no commissions for the boring thing, and so there's no one defending it except for me because I don't have a horse in this race either way. But if I put all my money in the boring thing, I would have more money. And I think that's true for almost everybody. And the people who would make more money doing complex stuff are almost always lucky, not good. We all have this belief that if I can get smart enough and read the Wall Street Journal or look at some charts on a fancy screen, then I can outperform. But it's basically all not true. It's just sometimes people get lucky, and that's fine. But if you do the simple, boring thing and minimize expenses, take those fees and commissions out of the pockets of the financial services industry, you, the individual, will do better. Everyone I've talked to in the industry says the same thing, essentially, which is you weren't magically making better outcomes for your customers. You were trying to sell your products so you could maximize the company's profits. It's kind of sad that this term financial advisor has just been so devastated by salespeople in the industry pushing commission products or trying to manage your money for a compounding fee or whatever it is, that individuals who want to go seek financial advice rightly feel terrified to talk to a financial advisor because they don't know what this person's agenda is. That's a tough part of this financial advice industry. We all see these headlines. People DM me this every single day. They're like, hey, this headline said X is about to happen. Should I do that or be afraid of that or whatever? And no one ever goes back and looks at the track record of that, right? Well, how many headlines has that newspaper put forward in the past making predictions, and how many of those were correct? And the reality is they're just random. Some say it's going to go up, some say it's going to go down, some say pick stock A, some pick stock B. In reality, that's just a commercial enterprise posting nonsense because no one's checking their track record, and it's as good as random. The two pieces of advice I always end all of my posts or articles with is very, very simple because the world of finances is very, very complex. And I keep it very simple because we're so likely to get wrapped up in this complexity. And the two very simple pieces of advice are, number one, live below your means. There are some people who make healthy six-figure salaries and are broke. If you make $500,000 a year and you spend $500,000 a year, there's a word for that. It's broke. You have zero. And that's a very stressful way to live because if you get laid off, if there's a tax change, if there's a market change, if like anything blinks, it's on you and the whole house of cards is going to collapse. Whereas if you make $60,000 a year and you spend $50,000 a year, that gives you $10,000 a year to save and invest. And so rule number one is to live below your means. And rule number two is to invest early and often. The combination of those two is like the financial fortress of solitude, where you can build your financial fortress around you. You can spend less than you make, you can invest, you can build that wealth. And that's really it. That's 98% of it. And the last 2% is just fine tuning details. What type of account do you open? What investment do you choose? Those things are important to look into. But I think some people get so focused on this. Oh, my friend says Dogecoin's the future. Should I take a loan out to buy Dogecoin? I'm like, oh my God, you are not doing the two rules. You are living beyond your means and you're not investing, you're gambling. Live below your means, invest early and often. And that's really 98% of the game. And the rest is just kind of figuring out what buttons to click on a website. for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been basically teaching. I retired after I sold my company at the age of 36, and I did nothing for a year. Then I started teaching personal finance and investing. About a year ago, two of my friends and I started a company to basically help this world of financial advice. Because if you talk to a financial advisor, most of the time they're either a commission salesperson or they're charging a annual compounding fee. And it makes it really hard to get unbiased financial advice that way. And so there's this different model called advice only, where you just pay for 1 hour or for one project, and there's no sales pitch, no money management, none of those misaligned incentives. And if you get a financial advisor that way, then you can basically get unbiased fiduciary financial advice without all the strings attached. And so my friends and I created a company called Nectarine, which is a marketplace of advice only financial advisors. So you can go to Nectarine, click find an advisor, filter by your needs, compare prices, compare availability, check out right on the site, meet via Zoom, and then you get a expert financial advisor with great reviews, all that good stuff, just for a clear upfront flat fee without all the other associated fees and commissions and all that stuff that's so common in the financial advice space. So that's what it is. And it's you can find it at hellonectarine.com. Personal Finance Club is the education brand, and it's mostly on Instagram at Personal Finance Club. And we post kind of daily infographics, lessons, tips, tools to kind of learn all this stuff. So you can do it yourself, or you can find all the blog articles and video lessons and stuff like that at personalfinanceclub.com. Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. Thanks for doing what you do, for teaching and sharing all your knowledge. I can't wait to get more people spreading the word because it's so valuable. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy, for being a trusted voice in this space and for being open about your journey. Your story reminds us that even with great success, there's always room for improvement. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know with a like or review and stay tuned for the next one.